Welcome everyone to another episode of Mycro Mysteries. I'm Regina, and today we have an incredible true story for you. This isn't fiction, this is a real documented case. We're taking you back to a small town in Towlands of Guanajuato, Mexico, where what seemed like a divine curse turned out to be something completely different.
Hey everyone, Michelle here, and let me tell you, when we first read about this actual case, we were absolutely blown away. This really happened. Real people, real suffering, real science, religion, superstition, and science all colliding in the most fascinating way.
Justin in the house, this is the kind of the history that remind you why we got into microbiology in the first place. It's not just about bacteria, it's about people, culture, and how science can literally save lives. And this case proves that.
Hi, welcome to a new episode. I'm Jessica, and I have to say the detective work that went into figuring this out was incredible. Real researchers went to this village, examined real patients, and discovered the truth. We're basically going to walk you through how they solved this medical mystery.
Hi everyone, how do you feel tonight? I'm Aram, and what's really important in this case is understand how stigma and the ignorance can make a treatable condition seem like punishment. These were real young people suffering from something real, but what is that we're going to find out, and so let's drive it.
So, we are in Guanajuato, late 19th or early 20th century. Religion was the highest authority, and people generally believed there was a disease caused by divine intervention.
Real people believe that pleasure outside marriage could bring literal physical punishment. They thought those who engaged in impure acts would be touched by the hands of Penelope.
The symptoms they describe spots on skin, hives all over bodies, prominent eruptions, and on mouth and genitals. Nothing but pain and regret.
Classic symptoms, maybe something, but without modern medicine, they interpret in as divine punishment.
When researchers heard about this documented case, they wanted to find out what was really happening scientifically.
The research team traveled to this rural town in Guanajuato. The community was very insulated, deeply religious with limited access to modern healthcare.
The villagers told them about young people who had been exiled from the community. They believed these individuals were cures.
The afflicted had been confined to a house from our village. The researchers found approximately 15 individuals, most between 18 and 25 years old.
Let me tell you about the in this case. Uh, 22-year-old man, we'll call him Juan.
The patient profile is Juan was Mexican nationality, mestizo ethnicity, worked as an agricultural laborer. He lived in extreme poverty in a rural area of Guanajuato.
His age, 22 years old, and his sex, male.
Race factors were significant. Juan was sexually active with multiple partners, including commercial sex workers from a nearby town.
Susceptibility to infection, no history of vaccination for any disease. Remember, this was before widespread vaccination programs started in rural Mexico.
So no comorbidities initial, but he was malnourished due to poverty. His immune system was likely compromised.
Lifestyle and exposure, heavy manual agricultural labor, poor nutrition, no access to clean water or proper sanitation, multiple exposures through unprotected sexual contacts starting about 6 months before researchers found him.
Let's talk about what Juan told the researchers, his symptoms. About 3 months before they found him, he noticed a small painless sore on his belly.
He was embarrassed and didn't seek help. The sore disappeared after a few weeks, so he thought he was fine and forgot about it.
But 6 weeks after that sore healed, he started feeling feverish and extremely tired. He had severe headaches and his joints ached constantly.
That's when the rash appeared all over his body. He also developed a sore throat and completely lost his appetite.
These symptoms, the fever, fatigue, rash, were what finally made the villagers notice something was wrong. That's when exiled him, thinking he was cursed.
Now the signs, what the researchers actually observed during physical examination. This is where it
First, the rash. It was everywhere on his body, but particularly characteristic on his palm and soles, copper-colored micropapular lesions that did each.
And his psychology changed. He was capable of 38 grades, heart rate elevated at 95 beats per minute, and respiratory rate normal, but he appeared in distress.
Anatomical changes. Multiple lesions in his mouth, shallow ulcers called mucus patches on the tongue and inner cheeks. Warty raised lesions in his groin area, condyloma.
Lymphadenopathy, swollen lymph nodes everywhere. Cervical, axillary, inguinal, and particularly the epitocular nodes in the elbow area.
They noticed patchy hair loss on his scalp. That characteristic mouth-eating appearance. When they examined his genitals, they found healing scars from a previous chancre.
Now, the laboratory findings. The researchers took exudate samples from the mucus patches and the condyloma lata.
Under dark field microscopy, they observed motile spirochetes, spiral-shaped bacteria with characteristic crooked movement. This was direct visualization of the pathogen.
They couldn't culture them. These organisms won't grow on artificial media even today, but seeing them move under dark field microscopy.
For immunological signs, blood samples show mild anemia. Hemoglobin of 11 grams per deciliter. Normal is 13 to 17 for males.
White blood cells count was slightly elevated at 11,000 cells per microliter, with lymphocytosis increasing lymphocytes, indicating immune response to infection.
The Westermann complement fiction test, an early serological test, was strongly positive with high titer. This detects antibodies against cardiopilin relays from damaged cells.
So, what were the specific features that really pointed to the diagnosis?
First, that initial painless chancre that healed spontaneously, that's pathognomic, uniquely characteristic for the primary stage of this particular infection.
Second, the rash on palms and soles that doesn't itch. Very few diseases present this specific way.
And don't forget about the mucus patches in the mouth and condyloma lata in the groin. Those are highly specific lesions.
Also, the generalized lymphadenopathy, especially those epitocular nodes, that's a classic sign.
And the spirochetes visible under dark field microscopy with the characteristic motility even before reliving with organism, it is that sealed the diagnosis.
Now, let's talk about how the disease progressed in Juan's case and how his condition deteriorates.
Initially, about 6 months before, researchers found him. Juan had sexual contact with an infected person, likely a commercial sex worker.
3 weeks after that exposure, he developed that single painless chancre on his penis. This was the primary stage. The chancre was firm raised with a clean base, is like highly infectious.
The chancre lasted about 3 to 4 weeks, then healed completely, leaving just a small scar. Juan thought he was cured and didn't worry about it anymore.
But that the deceptive part, the organism has already to disseminate throughout his entire blood system during the primary stage. So they were multiplying his lymph nodes and organs.
6 weeks after the chancre healed, so about 3 months after initial infection, the secondary stage began explosively.
His condition deteriorated rapidly. He developed high fever. The widespread rash appeared. Mucus patches formed in his mouth. Condyloma lata developed in his groin.
Over the next 2 months, the lesions multiplied all over his body. He lost more and more weight despite trying to eat. The headache became unbearable. He developed trenching night sweats.
His mental state also declined. He became increasingly confused, had difficulty concentrating, complained of vision problems, seeing halos around lights.
By the time the research found him, about 5 months after initial infection, his health was critical. He was severely malnourished and dehydrated from the fever and sweating, and showing early neurologic impairment.
Without treatment, researchers explain he was likely enter a latent phase where symptoms temporarily disappear, but the organism remains dormant. This could last years or decades.
They potentially progress to tertiary stage, devastating complications like destructive gummas eating away tissue, aortic aneurysms that could rupture, or neurosyphilis causing paralysis, dementia, and death.
Let's detail exactly what diagnostic tests were performed to confirm the diagnostic.
First test was darkfield microscopy on fresh exudate from active lesions. They observed a spiral organism measuring 6 to 15 micrometers length with 6 to 14 regular spirals. The organisms display characteristic rotational and flexional motility, spinning and bending movements.
Second, the serological testing. They performed the Worstman complement fixation test, which was the sterility in early 900s, and it's measured complement fixing antibodies.
The test was strongly positive with a very high titer, indicating active infection with robust antibodies response.
If this were today, we'd use BDRL, Venereal Disease Research Laboratory, or RPR, Rapid Plasma Regina. As non-treponema tests to detect antibodies against cardiolipin, these are quantitative. They give titers like 132 or 164.
Then we confirmed with treponemal tests like FDA, ABS, fluorescent treponemal antibody absorption, or TPPA, treponema pallidum particle agglutination. These detect antibodies specific to the organism itself.
Third, complete clinical examination documenting all characteristic lesions: the hilum chancre scar, widespread rash, mucus patches, condyle malata, lymphadenopathy, and alopecia.
Both complete blood count showing mild monocytes, anemia, and lymphocytes consisted with the chronic infection and immunity activation.
They wanted to perform lumbar puncture to examine cerebrospinal fluid, looking for CSF pleocytosis, elevated white cells, elevated protein, and positive serology, but lacked resources in that rural setting.
What was the medical team's impression when they put all this clinical and laboratory data together?
The case records show it was both scientifically fascinating and humanly heartbreaking. Here was a young man with a completely terrible bacterial infection.
But he and his entire community believed he was cursed by divine punishment for sin. He'd been exiled, isolate, left to suffer and die.
The diagnosis was absolutely clear. From the clinical presentation, the painless chancre, the characteristic rash and the palms and soles, the mucus patches, and the condyle malata.
Confirmed by laboratory findings, spirochetes on dark field microscopy, and strongly positive serological tests.
The challenge wasn't medical diagnosis. It was convincing the community this wasn't supernatural. They had to overcome centuries of religions, beliefs, and superstition.
The medical team explained to the village elders and to Juan himself this was caused by a microorganism, a tiny living thing invisible to the naked eye, that could be killed with medicine.
The decision to treat was immediate and urgent, but they also had to identify and treat all the other exiled individuals and Juan's sexual contacts to prevent further spread.
So, we have described all the things, the symptoms, the clinical progression, and the diagnostic test. Are you ready to reveal? The causative organism is Treponema pallidum.
That's right. Treponema pallidum causes syphilis, a sexually transmitted infection that has plagued humanity for centuries, maybe millennia.
T. pallidum is spirochete, a spiral-shaped bacterium. It's incredibly fine, only 0.1 to 0.2 micrometers in diameter, which is why it requires dark field microscopy or special silver staining to visualize.
This bacterium is an obligate human pathogen, meaning it can only infect humans, cannot survive outside the human body for more than a few hours. There are no animal reservoirs.
It's transmitted through direct contact with infection lesions, primarily during sexual activity, but also can cross the placenta to infect fetus.
Now, let's talk about how Treponema pallidum actually causes disease. What are the virulence factors and the weapons that they use?
First, virulence factor. Its unusual outer membrane structure, Treponema pallidum, has very few surface protein, only about 10 to 20 proteins on its surface compared to hundreds or thousands in most of the bacteria.
Why is that important? It makes T. pallidum nearly invisible to the immune system. a stealth strategy. The immune system has trouble recognizing it as a foreign.
Second, it produces adenosines, proteins that help it attach to and invade host cells. It can penetrate intact mucous membranes and even minor skin abrasures.
Third, it produces hyaluronidase, an enzyme that breaks down hyaluronic acid in connective tissue. This, like molecular scissors, cutting through tissue barriers, allowing bacteria to spread.
Fourth, it can cross biological barriers that normally protect private seats. The blood-brain barrier and the placent barrier. That's why it causes neurophilis and congenital syphilis.
At the molecular level, when Treponema pallidum invades, it triggers pattern recognition receptors on immune cells. This activates inflammatory signaling pathways and FKB cytokine production.
But here's a crucial point. Most tissue damage isn't from bacteria directly destroying cells. It's from the host's own immune response causing collateral damage.
Biologically, the bacteria multiply very slowly with generation time of about 30 hours. They microaerophilic, prefer low oxygen environments. They can produce many of their own nutrients, so they obligate parasites.
Physiologically, the infection caused systemic inflammatory response syndrome. That's why Juan had fever, malaise, lymphadenopathy. His body was mounting a strong immune response with cytokine release.
The bacteria causing autolytic damage. They invade the cells in leading blood vessels, and this leads its obligatory endotheliasis, inflammatory, and scarring the narrows and small blood vessels.
This reduces blood flow to affect tissues, causing ischemia and tissue damage. That's why you see the destructive lesions, gumas, in tertiary syphilis.
Localized infection at entry site with chancre formation. Organisms multiply to about 10 million per grams of tissue at the chancre site.
Secondary stage, hematogenous dissemination. Bacteria spread through bloodstream to every organ: skin, mucus, membranes, limbs, nodes, liver, kidney, bones, eyes, central nervous system, all became infected.
Tertiary stage, if untreated, chronic granulomatous inflammation from gumas in skin, bones, organs. Arthritis weakens the aorta wall, chronic meningovascular inflammation damage the brain and spinal cord.
The case documentation mentioned the initial treatment attempts to fail miserable. So let's talk about them.
First, given the short case of medication, the trial doctor used a mercury treatment, which had been used since the 16th century. Juan had mercury ointment applied to his skin and mercury vapor baths.
But mercury is a potent neurotoxin and nephrotoxin. Juan developed excessive salivation, swelling and bleeding gums, tooth loss, kidney damage with protein in his urine, and tremors.
The mercury didn't eliminate all the bacteria because it couldn't penetrate all the tissues where they were in high, specifically the central nervous system and bones.
After 6 weeks of mercury treatment, Juan's skin lesions improved slightly, but his systemic symptoms, fever, headache, and malaise.
They then tried salvarsan, also known as arsphenamine or compound 6600, an organoarsenic compound developed by Per Ehrlich.
Juan received weekly intravenous injection of salvarsan for 8 weeks. Each injection was painful and risky. This was better mercury, but still had significant toxicity.
He developed serious adverse effects, thrombophlebitis, hepatotoxicity with elevated liver enzymes indicating liver damage, and severe allergic reactions such as high fever and widespread rash.
The fundamental problem with both mercury and salvarsan was their severe toxicity to the patient and the difficulty in achieving adequate concentrations in all infected tissues, especially the central nervous system, without causing death.
Now, here's where we propose an innovative treatment approach combining modern antimicrobial therapy with cutting-edge immunotherapy and regenerative medicine.
While penicillin is the gold standard and highly effective for syphilis, with probably early neurophysilis and after failed toxin treatments, causing additional organ damage, a combination approach will be needed.
First component, high-dose intravenous aqueous crystalline penicillin, G24 million units per day, divided into doses every 4 hours for 14 days continuous therapy.
The polyethylene G is a highly effective because he inhibits the bacterial cell wall synthesis. The palladium has a peptidoglycan cell wall that penicillin targets.
Second component, the innovative part, therapeutic with the potential of phages in the treatment of Treponema pallidum.
Both traditional and modern technologies, which are constantly being developed, such as bread, bacteriophage recombinant electroporated DNA, or the CRISPR-Cas systems, allow for the production of phages with an extended host range and efficacy.
So in this way, we can resort to the analysis or sequencing of genetic material from the clinical samples expressed in the patient.
And the DIT-fast messenger RNA, mRNA, can decomplete bacterial mRNA to prevent ribosome access, ensuring that the cell's protein synthesis machinery becomes ineffective.
In this way, for example, the generation of the cell wall can be modulated, and together with long-acting penicillins, the effectiveness can be increased,
which reduces the extended use of penicillins, increasing the patient's recovery rate.
This combination addressed the infection from multiple angles: direct antimicrobial activity, immune management, inflammation control, and tissue healing.
So why will this combination approach work when previous treatments fail?
First, the high-dose penicillin provides sustained bacterial concentration in all the tissues, including the CSF, effectively killing actively repairing bacteria.
Within 2 weeks of starting this combining therapy, Juan's fever will resolve, hatches decrease significantly, and skin lesions being hardly visible.
After 4 weeks, all visible lesions healed completely. Weight stabilized, and he had begun gaining weight again as nutritional status improved.
At 3 months post-treatment, serological titers will be decreased fall from 132 to 1.8, indicating successful treatment response and declining bacterial load.
So let's talk about Juan's quality of life after completing this innovative treatment regimen.
Juan made a completed regimen. All symptoms resolved. No more rash, no more lesions, no more health checks. Our neurological symptoms was over.
His serological tests show continued decline in titers. He will likely eventually become seronegative. Tests are negative or maintain a very slow surface, a state with persistently low but stable titers.
More importantly, his quality of life has dramatically improved. He's back on his normal weight, actually above his pre-infection weight due to good nutrition. He's working full-time again in agriculture.
Physiologically, the impact was transformative. Juan went from believing he was cursed by demons and dying to understanding he had a treatable bacterial infection and is now completely cured.
His testimony helped the medical team treat all the other 14 exiled individuals in that village. They also identify and treat 23 additional people, Juan's sexual contacts, and their contacts.
Most importantly, Juan is living proof that science, compassion, evidence-based medicine, and innovative treatment approaches can overcome even the most challenging case of infectious disease.
So, let's bring this all together and close this fascinating case.
What started as supposed divine curse from Baphomet in a small isolated village in Guanajuato turned out to be syphilis, a bacterial infection caused by Treponema pallidum.
A young 22-year-old agricultural worker named Juan contracted the infection through unprotected sexual contact with commercial sex workers.
This multiply-pronged approach successfully cured his infection, resolved symptoms, healed tissue damage, and completely restored his quality of life.
This case powerfully demonstrates the importance of integrating traditional antimicrobial therapy with innovative immunological and regenerative medicine approaches.
Treponema pallidum remains a significant global public health challenge with approximately 6 to 100 million new cases annually worldwide and rising rates of congenital syphilis.
But with proper screening programs, early diagnosis, effective treatment with antibiotics, partner notification, and community education, we can control and potentially eliminate this ancient disease.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the case of the goat geese.
We hope you learned not just about Treponema pallidum and the syphilis, but also about the importance of combining rigorous scientific thinking with a social awareness and the compassion.
Remember to approach every patient and every case with curiosity, critical thinking, and compassion. always question supernatural explanation and seek scientific truth through evidence.
We have been Regina, Michelle, Justin, Jessica, and Aram. Thank you so much for listening, Mycro Mysteries.